So let's start. Uh, Before I go into the details of my presentation, I would like to give you an outline what will be my talk about. I will start with the discussion of the context, available problem in the context, my research motivation, research methodology that I adopted in the study, results, analysis, and finally conclude with some reflection and recommendations. Context. The conference theme or symposium theme is mainly focused on ICT4D that we are all familiar with. Now, ICT4D have several applications, some of them gone for agriculture, social benefit, economic growth. But today in my presentation, I'll talk about ICT and education. I will talk about the educational disparity between urban and rural area. So in urban school, in the city school, the school has the benefit of better environment, study material, experienced teacher, access to technology, transportation means. And what would be the destination of the student who are studying in a city school or college? They will dreaming about becoming an academic, a scientist, engineer, medical doctor, businessman, or even flying the plane. And they are trying to make the world in a new form of technology. In the contrary, this is the scenario of a school at village. They more or less lack all the benefits I had mentioned earlier. What will be the destination of a boy or girl who's studying in a village school? Most likely they ended up with child labor or drug addiction, this kind of scenario. Some of the researchers have tried to compare this kind of disparity, and they find out that distance barrier, lack of transportation means, lack of technology, unavailable experienced teacher, gender issue are main force behind the disparity of education. Now, based on this, several government and non-profit organizations are coming with the solution based on ICT and try to provide the education to the underprivileged and isolated larger group of population in the village sector. And they're using their basic method about ICT. So what is ICT use in the education? It could be internet, television, radio, mobile, as the presenter before me talked about mobile and internet, but I didn't find any television or radio is part of ICT. So I will tell you a story about a project development story of e-learning system development requirements, how in the project e-learning system requirements has been dealing with. For the e-learning system development, they gather the requirements by meeting and workshop, interviews, surveys, and their project developer experience that they gather from earlier project development. And they make an architecture of the system, and the village people are having the access of technology in the staying at home or the rural community. So there was a problem. This project hasn't taken the consideration of regulation and policy document. So each project development, today is the keynote speaker talked about the policy, how the policies develop in a system development. So this particular example of a story didn't mention about how to take requirements from the policy or regulations. So as a consequence, the project has given a huge penalty for not being comply with the policy. So the problem of e-learning project development usually has much higher dropout rates that compared to traditional classroom-based learning. Poor quality of several ICT-based learning project development, many e-learning projects facing difficulties since their birth, and has caused some serious user dissatisfaction. High abstraction, and the reason behind this problem is high abstraction rate in the system development requirements and the extraction process of requirements. In today's literature, we could find about 20 approaches that deal with extraction requirements for the system development. And they are like this. I mean, unconnected, one piece of here, one piece of there. I mean, they don't have any connection between one phase to the next phase, one process to the next process. So the motivation of my study is, although the requirements extraction process approach has gained much attention, but it was a fragmented attention and isolated method and tools development. Because of the absence of a clear understanding of system development requirements, the extraction in e-learning project, the requirements extraction in e-learning project is sometimes informal, peripheral, not at the way they're supposed to extract the requirements. So the motivation of my study is to gather all the approaches and try to connect them each other. The research methodology I have adopted is systematic literature review, SLR. Now, SLR can be one of two types. One is conventional SLR, one is mapping SLR. In this study, I have taken the mapping as SLR because mapping SLR is appropriate for qualitative analysis and try to find out the available approaches, gather them together, classify them, and present a qualitative analysis. So these were the stages I have gone through to collect the process of requirements extraction. So I'm not going into the details of the whole process because it will take at least 10 minutes to describe the whole process I've gone through. The analysis, before going into analysis of my study, these are the results I have found. About 20 papers discussing about how to extract requirements for a system development, especially e-learning system development. So let's start about combining these approaches together. These 20 approaches are the fragment of the whole process of the requirements extraction. And let's try to combine this whole approaches, 20 approaches in a same model of framework, if you could say. So we have a start point. Now, the requirements can be extracted from three sources. One is from stakeholder, asking questions to the stakeholder, what will be the requirements of the system development, e-learning system development, and goal-based questionnaire, of course. And this stakeholder will be guided by the necessary information of the project development, sometimes their domain knowledge. They should be aware what should be doing in this ICT-based learning project development. And collect a note from the interviews. The stakeholder could be used by the system analyst to use their experience, the analyst experience, what the stakeholder might think about this project development and try to come up with the expected requirements of the system development. And third is the policy. I mean, in a ICT-based learning project development or any project development should have some policy and regulation. They need to comply with the regulation. And if any rules is violated from the policy or regulations, the project development has to have faced some severe penalty for not being comply with the policy. So extract the rules from the policy documents, and finally the system analysts take experience from the earlier project development. As I have asked Supriya that she has gone through two case study, how this two case study is helping the future issue. So the same project developer who are dealing more and more project could use their earlier experience in their next project development. So they have come up with potential requirements, and they analyze the text and speech. I mean, in what workshop they try to record the workshop, and there need to be speech detection. What will be the requirements of the whole workshop by speech and text. And finally, they come up with a set of requirements from the three sources. One is from stakeholder, one is from regulation policy, one is from earlier project development experience. So the reflection of the study is the requirements elicitation process is most ambiguous and challenging process in the system development because of its informal expression and processing in natural languages, and still there is no consensus about the process of requirements elicitation. I mean, we have different process here, but just like we show that a complete picture is not there. We have some tools is asking goal-based questionnaire. One is taking the policy document to extract rule. One tool is helping to ask goal-based questions to the stakeholder. One is taking the earlier project development experience. But for the system development, in the ICT project development, do not take the whole picture about how to extract the requirements for the system development. So this study serves the e-learning project analysis as the means of understanding the system development requirements, their complete elicitation process, and deriving appropriate methods for the requirements extraction process. In my study, I found that some of the approaches focus just on the one particular requirements. For example, they are trying to extract only the privacy requirements or only the security requirements. So there is an ambiguous understanding that those approaches can just work only those particular requirements, or they can work in a whole set of requirements. This issue need to be resolved in future, and my study is a preliminary study. It's just I try to connect pieces of process one after another, and a thorough case study about how this process is going through is not studied yet. So our future issue is to validate this process by case study and see if there is any missing link is there or not. So here are some of the reference I have used in my presentation. And thank you all. If you have any questions.
Thank you for the clarity of your presentation. And we can take a question or
Yeah,
the
it's
debate in the end.
yes. Yes, please.
Yeah, it seems like you are comparing, when you compare the village education and the town education,
Mhm.
you are satisfied that the town education is good. And
That's what the
ICT will
research
give you
says
to
that.
extend what is down in the village. Is that your goal?
Well, that's what the researchers say, that the education dropout rate is more than village than the town. And there is some reference that says that. It's more likely. What do you think the education level a child grew up in a town situation or a child grew up at a village?
Because my thinking is that suppose you find that the education in town now is worse than the education in town the previous time. So you are going to transfer what is not so good enough.
Well, that's the future issue. Research could be taken that the way we think, or at least the way we thought about past years, that trying to reach the village people with the technology for their better education. That's what we were taught before. Now it's try to get research according to you that now what is the situation. I mean, the education is better in the town school or at the village school. Nevertheless, my focus is not on the educational development. My focus was how in a ICT-based project development, how the project developer should deal with the requirements. So that should be need future studies, I guess.